Hi class, how are you today? You know I can't hear you, right? Anyway, the learning target for today is to multiply polynomials. So we just learned how to multiply monomials. Now we're going to use what we just learned and multiply polynomials with multiple terms. First, let's look at actual numbers. So here we have 342 times 23. And remember when we did the distributive property and found an easier way to multiply numbers using that? Well, this kind of works in a similar way. So let's break this up a little bit. So let's call this 300 plus 40 plus 2. See what I did there? I took 342 and broke it up into each spot. 300, 40, and 2. And so that is being multiplied by 20 plus 3. So break everything up by its place. So we've got hundreds place plus tens place plus ones place times tens place plus ones place. And there's a few different ways to look about how to do this. First, we'll do it a little bit more algebraically. And to look at it this way, you want to multiply everything on one side by everything on the other side. So 300 will be multiplied by 20 and by 3. 40 will be multiplied by 20 and by 3. And 2 will be multiplied by 20 and by 3. So let's do each of these. So we've got 300 times 20 is 6,000, plus 300 times 3 is 900, plus 40 times 20 is 800, 40 times 3 is 120, and 2 times 20 is 40, and then 2 times 3 is 6. So then add them all up. Let's just add up the things that have the same amount of zeros first and say 6,000 plus, and then add these two. 900 plus 800 is 1,700. Then 120 plus 40 is 180. And then 6. And so we can add that up, and that'll give us 7,886. Now there's a different way to do this, and that's geometrically. So let's take a rectangle. And so let's break up 342 and 23 like we did before. So we have 300, we have 40, and we have 2, and over here we have 20, and we have 3. And so we're breaking up this rectangle into different parts. And we want to find the area of the whole thing. If you look at this geometrically, you can see, well, area of this plus the 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 area of this will give you the area of the whole thing. So we're going to do the same thing we just did, but more visually and geometrically, if your mind thinks that way. So here we have 300 times 20 will give us this spot. So that'll be 600. 6,000, sorry. Then 300 times 3 will give us 900. $40 times 20 will give us 800. 40 times 3 will give us 120. 2 times 20 will give us 40. And 2 times 3 will give us 6. And so the way this often works is to add everything that's diagonal of each other. So let's move this over a little bit and say 800 plus 900, make it diagonally, will give us 1,700. 40 plus 120 will give us 180. And then 6 is by itself, and 6,000 is by itself. And then, just like we did before, we add them, and we should get the same answer. And that should be 7,886. So, two different ways to do it. I'm more algebra mind, so I like the first way, but some people are more visual, more geometric, and prefer the second way. Either is up to you. Alright, so now let's do it actually with polynomials. So here we have 3x squared plus 4x plus 2 times 2x plus 3. It's going to be the same method we just did, but this time we're involving variables. Now, I'm going to start at the geometric way first. So let's set it up. Set up our rectangle. And we should have 3x squared, 4x and 2, and 2x and 3. And so we break it up. And we have a rectangle like we did before. And then we multiply these things. So 3x squared times 2x. This is what we just did with multiplying monomials. Multiply the numbers first. So 3 times 2 is 6. And then x squared times x. Add the exponents. 2 plus 1 is 3. So x cubed. Then 3x squared times 3. That'll give us 9x squared. Then 4x times 2x will give us 8x squared. Remember, both the x's have a 1 at the exponent, so 1 plus 1 is 2. Then 4x times 3 will give us 12x. Then 2 times 2x will give us 4x. And 2 times 3 will give us 6. Look a little familiar with the numbers? It should. So, the next thing we want to do is combine like terms. So, notice here we have x cubed, but there aren't any other x cubes, so that'll be left by itself. So we'll have just 6x cubed, and then we have 8x squared and 9x squared. Those two can add together. We'll give you 17x squared. 4x plus 12x will give us 16x. and then 6 is by itself. And then you look, are there any like terms that we can combine? Here we have 6x to the third, so this is an x to the third, this is an x squared, this is an x, this is just a number. So we can't combine any like terms, so this is our final answer. Alright, the last thing that I want to talk about is what do you do when you have a polynomial squared? I know a lot of people that would look at that and say, they would just say, oh, well, 5x is being squared and 6 is being squared. So they would just call it 25x plus 36. It doesn't work like that. There's no property that allows that to happen. So you have to think, what happens when you square something? Well, you multiply it by itself, right? So this is the same thing as saying 5x minus 6 times 5x minus 6. And then you need to multiply it. So 5x needs to multiply by 5x, which is 25x squared. Remember, add the exponents. Then 5x needs to multiply by negative 6. So that'll give us a negative 30x. So remember, this minus 6 works as a negative. So it's 5x times negative 6 is a negative 30x. And then negative 6 needs to multiply by 5x. So that'll be another negative 30x. And negative 6 times negative 6 is a positive 36. So then we combine like terms, and notice here we have two things with x's, but this x squared has nothing to add with, and this 36 has nothing to add with, so we just add these two. So we'll get 25x squared, and then minus 30x, that'll give us a negative 60x. And then plus 36. If you were to look at this geometrically, say we had a square, and the length of one of the squares is 5x minus 6. And that doesn't necessarily make sense geometrically because you can't have a negative 6 for a length, but it still works if we try to do it out. So if we break this up to 5x and negative 6, well, we don't have a square anymore. So we can't say square one side, so we have to treat it like any other rectangle and still have the 5x and minus 6 on the other side. And then multiply everything. So 5x times 5x is 25x squared. 5x times negative 6 is negative 30x. Negative 6 times 5x is negative 30x. And negative 6 times negative 6 is a positive 36. And then do like we did before and multiply, add diagonally. So 25x squared, and then negative 30x is a negative 60x. And then plus 36, and we get the same answer. Alright, that's it for the lesson. Now time for the sponge. Remember, you have to attempt the sponge, and if you get all the correct questions right, you'll get a bonus point on the next test. Once again, make sure to take notes on the entire lesson, and take a picture of your notes and your sponge, and submit them to your backpack. Have a good night.